Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle Bookshop again today. For those of you who are new to the channel, the 200 of you who are new to the channel, first of all, welcome. And second, there's a used bookstore here in Boston called the Brattle Bookshop. It's very old. It has a long story. It's moved around a lot. I've been a customer there for a very, very long time. And the current incarnation of the Brattle Bookshop is a 3-story used bookstore that is just a gem. First and second floor, just general interest books broken down by category and alphabetized by author, and then the third floor is collectible items that are slightly more expensive. The prices inside the shop are incredibly fair, and the shop's turnaround, their buying through, is so enormous, so robust that there's piles and piles of new stuff every day. Which is a mixed blessing. On the one hand, you don't have the doldrums that afflict so many used bookstores where I have been a customer. I have been a customer in many great used bookstores, big and small, and one of the complaints that I had about them was that the stock never changed, or never much changed. That's the good part. The bad part is that unlike those other bookstores, if you see something on a shelf at the Brattle and you want it, you're risking a lot to leave it there. You really ought to just get it, because there's a good chance it will be gone when next you go by. And as I mentioned before, that all would be recommendation enough for the Brattle, but in addition to that, they have a lot next door, where ordinarily another building would be, that's full of bargain carts. $1, $3, and $5 sale books that are just fine. They're sometimes are a tiny bit worse for wear, but only because they're outside, not because they're put out there that way. And you get an infinite variety of stuff that comes in on the bargain carts, and you can never tell what you're going to find there, because the bargain carts aren't organized in any way except by price. So you really have to sort of pour through them all, and I love doing that. I have done that in all weathers, in all times of my life, in all mind frames. There have been times when I had just lost someone I loved, and I was so raw with the emotion of it that I couldn't stand to see anyone. But I still wanted to grapple my way back to the world, and I would go to the Brattle to do that and just commune with these books, all of whom I have a long, long history with. I know so many, recognize so many of the titles, have long memories going back. It's almost a conversation, and it always worked. And also, in happy times, I know the staff at the Brattle, a lot of them, and I've known a lot of them for years. So it's a wonderful, welcoming place. And I went today. It was a touch of fall weather in the air, no sun, no direct sunlight, and cool. And for the first time in 3 weeks, a dip in the humidity. The humidity levels here have been like a Bolivian rainforest for the last 3 weeks, so that even when it's cool and the sun isn't directly out, if you go outside and stand in one place without moving, you will burst out into sweat. And that it feels like there's a dip in that today. So it was a perfect book browsing day, and I had an arrangement made for the little puppy so that she wasn't missing me. So I went to the Brattle, and I rooted around in the carts, and I had a blast, and I want to show you what I got. Now, keep in mind, my goal here at Hyde Cottage is to decrease the number of my books, to make a small, hard, perfect book collection. That has always been my goal. I believe that's the goal of all of us, but there have been many, many years, many decades where I was wayward in that goal, and now I am focused like a laser. And the rationale that I'm telling myself today for why I got an armload of books despite that laser focus is that you have to buy a bunch of stuff in order to sift out the stuff that you want to keep and the stuff that you want to discard. That's what I'm telling myself today. So I got an armload of books, some of which I know will go in the permanent collection, a few of which will go in this room. And the first one that I want to show you is a perfect illustration of something that I have often talked about the Brattle, maybe not often on BookTube, but the Brattle is constantly buying books. They have a van out all the time buying books from people, from estates, from whatnot, boxing them up and bringing them back to the shop. They go down into the basement, They wait sometimes a short amount of time, sometimes a very long amount of time. But there's an odd Brownian movement to where those books go. Collections have a weird tendency to stick together. Not just the Brattle, but in the sorting basements of half a dozen used bookstores where I've been. Collections have a weird tendency to stay together. And one seller can often be traced in the imprint of the books that they sell. So the translation, if you're a habitué of the outside bargain carts of the Brattle the way I am, is that if you see a volume in a series, and it's not the first one, you shouldn't make the decision to say, well, I want this series, but I don't want to start with volume 3. I want to start with volume 1 and volume 2. Assume, if it's the Brattle outdoor sale carts, assume that volume 1 and volume 2 were sold by the same person that sold volume 3, and that it's just a sorting process that's making volume 3 come out first. I try always to follow this rule on the sale lot. And the other day, I followed it because I realized to my horror that I don't have a copy of I, Claudius or Claudius the God by Robert Graves. And I want them in the white mass-market BBC paperbacks that went along with the epic BBC production of I, Claudius. And the other day, I found Claudius the God in that edition. That is the edition of I, Claudius and Claudius the God that I want, unless a really nice one-volume comes out or something like that down the line. But that is the edition that I want, even though I don't really buy mass markets anymore. And I saw Claudius the God, and I got it, and I showed it on this channel, and I said, sure enough, the chances are very good that the person who sold the Brattle this copy of Claudius the God also sold them a copy of I, Claudius in the exact same format. And they did. So now I have the two. Now I have I, Claudius and Claudius the God in the form that I want, and I already made up my mind months ago that I want to reread these books before the year is out, and now I will. now that I have the two, that's a long way of saying now that I have the two of them, it's just let it be a lesson to you. You know, those of you won't go to the Brattle. Most of you won't go to the Brattle. If you come to Boston and you want to go to the Brattle, feel free to let me know, and I will take you there. But one of the lessons of the Brattle is that you can't bully its karma. The sale lot will give you what it gives you. It's totally random, and you shouldn't ever go to the sale lot saying, well, I'm demanding to find a copy of this, that, or the other thing. Instead, go with the flow. If you go with the flow, then the flow will sometimes go with you. I have never bullied the karma of the Brattle sale carts, and as a result, if I want to write about Robert Graves, sure enough, there'll be 20 books about Robert Graves out in the sale lot because I did not ask. Or when I got the idea to garden, all of a sudden the Brattle sale carts were full of gardening books. So this is a perfect example. Now I have this just because I waited. And imagine how horrible I'd feel if I'd seen Claudius the God in the form that I want and said, well, it's too bad it isn't I, Claudius. Well, the next one is something I didn't know existed. It's a penguin that I didn't know existed. It's this. It's, can you see that? Man of Straw by Heinrich Mann, the brother of Thomas Mann, who also had a long publishing career that was, well, I believe that there's a scholarly consensus that Thomas Mann was fairly benevolent to his brother, and I don't believe that consensus is correct. I think Thomas Mann is just another example, one of the 20th century examples, but it goes back 3 centuries, of a writer in a family who consciously or unconsciously decided to try and sabotage the career of other writers in the family. I think there's hardly a writing family that you can look at where you can't find evidence of that. But one way or another, I didn't know that this existed in English, and I didn't know that it existed as a Penguin. I had no idea that Penguin published Heinrich Mann at all. And now I'm wondering if they published all of him. But I have never read this book. I've read some of Heinrich Mann, but not this one. So, even though it's an English language translation, this is. Do we even know who translated this? This is from the 1970s, I think. 1988. This is a 1988 reprint, and back in the 70s and 80s, you were far less likely to have a publisher credit the translator or make a big deal out of the translator. glad that we've grown out of that. But I'm not seeing a translator. Is it possible that Heinrich Mann is the translator? I confess I'm ashamed to say I don't know. I really need to read a biography of Thomas Mann. There have been a couple of really epic ones in English that I haven't ever got to, so I should probably do that. The next one is a guilty pleasure. They don't, in fact, get much guiltier, although we have a couple of guilty pleasures in this particular Brattle Haul. This is Lost Love Found by the great hyperventilator of classic old romances, Bertrand Small, who did a big bunch of breathless, bodice-ripping romances that are saturated in sex. She did her best-selling book, I think, was Skye O'Malley, which was a surprise to her. And forever afterwards, she spent time with her big novels going back to the O'Malley family, the O'Malley clan. And there's an O'Malley, there's a hero in here that's of the O'Malley clan. But this book is about Valentina. See, we have some cover art on the back. And that woman, I believe, is supposed to be Queen Elizabeth I. We'll call it artistic license. Valentina, a tender rose yearning to be plucked. She had been admired, married, widowed, yet had never known love. Not even in the illustrious court of Queen Elizabeth, where her innocent, violet-eyed beauty fired the hearts of England's most gallant gentry, especially the roguish Earl of Kemp, and also the irrepressible Lord Padraig Burke, also of the passionate O'Malley lineage. But her innocence shattered when a deathbed confession revealed her true father might have been not Lord Bliss, but the lustful Sultan Murad of Istanbul, or even Prince Javid Khan. Determined to find the truth, Valentina set sail for the east, a voyage of unsurpassed danger and erotic discovery. Abducted on the streets of Istanbul by the love-crazed Grand Vizier, Pasha, installed in his harem, subjected to his lascivious excesses, Valentina defies in spirit what her flesh cannot resist, for her heart craves only one man, a man she believes has vanished forever. In case you're wondering, those of you who might be too young to be familiar with the romances of Bertrand Small, and you're wondering if maybe this book caught her in a particularly amped up phase in her life, no, they're all that way. They're delightful fun. They have not aged well, as you can tell even from that brief synopsis. They haven't aged well in terms of our gender ideas, our nationalistic ideas. You couldn't publish a Bertrand Small romance today, I don't think. But I'd like to hope on this channel that we've sort of quietly agreed to just be adults about that kind of thing, just read past it. It'd be one thing if this were a 20-something writer today. Then you'd be within your bounds to say, all right, well, consciousness has changed a bit, and public discourse has certainly grown up a bit, so what are you doing? But otherwise, I'd like to think on this channel that we could pick up a Bertrand Small, realize what it is, and read it. Read the heck out of it and have a ton of fun. I hope. I haven't read a Bertrand Small in way too long, and I saw this thing there, these nice big trade paperbacks. She was doing these when everybody else was doing little mass market paperbacks, and she resisted that. She wanted her books to be a big, opulent event. And she really does the opulence well. So I will haven't read one in way too long, so I will dig right in. Then the next two that we have here are Penguin UK trade paperbacks. I have a weakness for Penguin UK trade paperbacks. I don't know why. I just do. Something about the paper quality, something about the cover design or whatever. This is a remarkable book. The first one is Traveling Heroes by Robin Lane Fox, which is a meditation on the world of Homer, on the world of the gods, but it's unlike any Homeric meditation that I have ever read. In its combination of the author's really deep-seated contemplations of the concepts behind Homer, and also tons and tons of practicalities of the speed that a warship can be rowed over the open ocean, and what that speed would be like, what people would think of it as if they didn't know anything faster that had been created by man. Robin Lane Fox is an amazingly eloquent writer, but there's just an amazing breadth. I want to read you a bit here. This is just from the very beginning. In the 15th book of Homer's Iliad, the goddess Hera flies across to Mount Olympus, and the poet compares her to a particular movement of the human mind. When a man has traveled far and wide, he tells us, his mind will sometimes leap, and he will think, I wish I was here, or I wish I was there. And he longs for many different things. Hera's sideways flight is as swift as these inconsistent thoughts as she moves from the peak of one mountain to another. 2,700 years later, we still know from inner experience what Homer meant. We do not connect such thoughts with the speed of a passing goddess, which we might imagine, rather as the invisible speed of light. Homer's imagination is so much more precise. When a goddess descends directly to earth, he compares her descent to a vertical shower of hailstones. When she flies sideways, he refers us inwards to those lateral fancies which express our enduring sense that life does not have to be as it is. And you get a sense even there of the weird combination of close reading and just sort of dreaming. I loved this book when I first encountered it in the American edition, and I've seen the American edition at the Brattle, and I like it just fine, but I don't have a copy. And so I grabbed this one when I saw it because I'm up for a reread. Reading Homer this summer is really made me want to reread stuff about him. And then the next one, really there is no excuse, except that the books at the sale lot of the Brattle are so cheap. But there is no excuse for me to have indulged in this. This is the UK trade paperback of The Plantagenets by Dan Jones. And it's a different, better, of course, needless to say, design of the cover than the American version, but the reason that there's no excuse for it is because I have the American trade paperback of The Plantagenets by Dan Jones, and the American trade paperback has a blurb on its cover by me. Yes, you would think that would be the edition that I would keep and that I wouldn't need any others. But no, no, I saw the UK trade paperback and I had to have it. And I love this book. It's so far my favorite, Dan Jones, so I grabbed it. But anyway, we'll finish up with two hardcovers. They are slightly the worse for wear. I will lovingly restore them to life and love. And the first one is a biography. You all know I love biographies, but I've cleared off extra space, bookshelves of space, to fill with biography, and there are still empty shelves in this room. But I'm being very careful about what I put there. I'm not just hoovering up every biography that I see. I want a lot of biographies. I wouldn't mind if most of the books in the other room were biographies, but I want them all to be really good. And boy, oh boy, did I find a good one for a song. It's this. It's R.C. Bald's Life of John Donne. Slightly ragged condition, but I'll fix that up in no time. It'll look beautiful when I'm done with it. And this is an incredible work. Just incredible in terms of the icy precision of its research, and also the old world eloquence of its prose. It's amazing to read. It is the definitive biography of John Donne. All the ones that come after it either build on top of it slightly, or quarry it. Just go digging around in Bald's John Donne and make a smaller and lesser book of your own. This, it's an ugly design and all, but this is the John Donne biography to have. And I don't think I have any others. I had this once upon a time, and then some young friend asked me, what is the John Donne book to have as a biography if I'm not afraid of serious reading? And I said, this is the one, and I sent it to him. So I don't have a copy. But as far as I can remember, I have read and sometimes reviewed later John Donne biographies, but I haven't bothered to keep them because I knew all along that this is the one I wanted. And that, again, I knew the Brattle would provide. The Brattle would have a copy of this eventually, and here it is. So I will fix it up and then probably reread chunks of it as well. But the next one, book 2, is the find of the day. It also needs some tender loving care. I will happily make this into a hardcover with a dust jacket that will last forever, and that will last for many, many rereadings, which is exactly what it will get. Talk about bodice-ripping, guilty pleasure historical fiction. This is perhaps the greatest example of them all. This is The Great Forever Amber by Kathleen Winsor. Look at that cover. This takes place in Carolingian England, but that is Brigitte Bardot. Go figure. But don't try too hard. And this is our author, who spent an enormous amount of this is the prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Spent an enormous amount of time researching this gigantic, wonderful historical novel about. Let's see here. The sensational story of a willful, beautiful, and frankly amorous woman of England's most scandalous age. Even before she had reached full blossom of her womanhood, Amber St. Clair was acutely conscious that she possessed a very special quality. It was a kind of warm luxuriance, something immediately suggestive to every man who encountered her of pleasurable fulfillment. And it was this rare and intangible quality that Amber wielded as a weapon, using her power over men to soar above the mean circumstances of her childhood and become the toast of restoration and the mistress to a king. This is Kathleen Winsor studied the reign of Charles, the Merry Monarch, and the women who were constantly doing exactly this. They were sexually alluring their way into the heights of power, being given estates and incomes and titles, because Charles could not say no. He was a totally irresponsible monarch, but he was a generous lover. He was a generous man, just in general, unless you crossed him, in which case the length of time that you'd known him would mean nothing. But if you were on his good side, he didn't require you to kiss the ground. He didn't require you to grovel. If you were on his good side, which most people were, to give him his credit, most people were, if you were on his good side, he was unbelievably open-handed in his generosity. It was a striking characteristic. Let's put it that way. Certainly nothing like his father. And the women, the lovers who traipsed in and out of his life, very much benefited from that. Almost none of them were. They knew how to play the game. And Kathleen Windsor's stroke of genius is to create the ultimate of those and work her into the lineup of Charles's mistresses. This is such a wonderful book. I forgive it everything. I don't need to forgive it for factual inaccuracies, because there are hardly any. Kathleen Winsor went on and on when this was a brushfire bestseller. There was a time, if you worked in bookstores when this first came out, when the only thing anybody wanted when they came through the front door was Forever Amber, or that Amber book, or that book about the lady. It was the only thing anybody wanted. It spawned a cottage industry of knockoff books from a bunch of other people, and was lauded and decried in the press as this sudsy sex romp. And Kathleen Winsor, she knew what side of the bed her toast was buttered on, so she didn't push back too hard. But in interviews and in person, she would remind people, maybe not stridently, but still pointedly, that an enormous amount of historical research went into this book. It's like she knew perfectly well what she was doing when she created Amber St. Clair, though, and it wasn't historical research. Forever Amber is sexy right down to the ground and casts a spell on everyone, including Samuel Pepys. And I love this book. I have recommended it so many times to so many people. I used to have the old there was a wonderful mass market paperback that was really, really durable, but even so, I read mine until it fell apart, and it finally did fall apart. And then about 25, 30 years ago, I forget the publisher, but somebody came out with a really big, fat trade paperback with a painting on the cover that was a detail of a portrait of Nell Gwynn, who is the real Amber St. Clair, on whose life Amber St. Clair's life is heavily patterned, let's put it that way. And I got that trade paperback. I was always happy to find it. I always still am happy to find it at any used bookstore sale as a gift to other people, but never to keep myself, because it's not particularly well made. I was disappointed when I remember first opening the box at the bookstore when it came out and thinking, oh my God, Forever Amber is back in print. And then I sort of looked at it and realized that it was a big fat trade paperback, but the manufacturer had decided to just put a couple of dots of glue on the spine, so that the cover is going to pop right off if you read it with anything but kid gloves. And if with a book like this, you're going to want to throw it in your bag. You're going to want to keep it with you, you're not going to want it to end. I have read this, I don't know how many times. I've never wanted it to end. And now I have a hardcover with a dust jacket. I will reinforce the dust jacket, and then it will be fine. I won't need to ever look for this again. I will only need to look for copies for other people, for presents. So that was my Brattle haul, and there were some things in here that I am fairly certain I will keep forever, which is the whole point. I don't know that I will keep Heinrich Mann forever. I will probably read that novel, think of it, and then get rid of it. But the bald John Donne, Forever Amber? Absolutely. So this is what we have here. We have Forever Amber. We have J.C. Bald's biography of John Donne, a classic of the biographical genre. We have Dan Jones' The Plantagenets in a UK trade paperback that does not have a blurb by Steve on the cover. Oh, excuse me. We have Traveling Heroes by Robin Lane Fox in a UK trade paperback. We have Lost Love Found by Bertrand Small, the ultimate guilty pleasure. We have Man of Straw by Heinrich Mann, about the totally corrupt government under Kaiser Wilhelm, the kind of Jeremiad against the government of Kaiser Wilhelm that got Heinrich Mann exiled, that caused him trouble. What little I know, granted I need to learn more, what little I know gives me the impression that Heinrich Mann was, in his own way, even more courageous than his brother, if not as talented. And the only reason that he wasn't as talented as his brother is because almost nobody was. but that's a rant for another day. And I, Claudius, in the old BBC production of the mass market paperback, the form that I wanted it in. So this was my Brattle haul for today, in which I am greatly pleased. So I've got some book reinforcing fun to do, but other than that, lots of reading. That I will use rereading of these things interspersed with the reading of new stuff. That's always fun as a palate cleanser, as a change of pace. So I'll wrap this up for now. That was my Brattle trip. I would very much like to go back to the Brattle again this week. And I'm going to see if maybe I can do that. Maybe go back a couple of times. That would be fun. But in any case, thank you as always for sitting and listening to me, and I will be back soon. Thank you, BookTube.